and for meeting with me. If you want to start by just introducing yourself, talk a little bit about like who you are and what you do as a lawyer.
Sure. So my name is Dawn Belt. I'm a partner at Fenwick and West, which is a technology-focused law firm of about 500 lawyers with offices in tech hubs all over the country. Silicon Valley, which is where I'm based, um, San Francisco, Santa Monica, Seattle, New York, and a new office in Washington, D.C. to support some of the regulatory needs that our tech company clients tend to have. I have been doing this for 17 years, almost 18 years, all here at this firm. I did a JD MBA at UC Berkeley before coming here. Before that, I worked as an economic consultant for about 5 years. And like we can talk a little bit more about that if you're interested, but that was an interesting job where I did both a lot of quantitative and qualitative analysis. And I have an econ undergrad degree from Stanford. I'm originally from the Los Angeles area, moved up to the Bay Area for college, and I've stayed here since.
Nice. And has law always kind of been like your idea? I know you majored in econ. Were your interests like shifted after that, or were you always like, I'm gonna be a lawyer? Like, was that your
No, actually, I had no thoughts of being a lawyer when I went to college. I didn't know any lawyers growing up, never had access to anything like you're doing, Mira, here. So the only thing I knew about lawyers was what I saw on TV. It seemed very dramatic, but the idea of standing up in a courtroom would have been terrifying to me. Like would
Mhm.
not have sounded fun at all. To me at that time. And so I went to college not really knowing what I wanted to do. I actually thought maybe journalism, maybe be an English major. I actually took an econ class as an undergrad, and it really clicked for me. So that it was just, I felt like in English, I was taking English classes, I was doing okay, working really hard and doing okay. I take the intro to econ class, and it's just like, wow, this feels natural and intuitive to me. So I just happened to find something that fit. I also just, because this is a fun story, as you guys are doing your whole discovery, I also tried an engineering class, and it was sort of an interesting lecture. But when I saw the first problem set, I had to drop the class. I was like, I don't know how to do this. I had no idea. So it's really interesting just what clicks, because I think about my husband, who's an engineer, and that just clicked for, he knew from the beginning, like, this is what I want, this is how I solve problems. I also solve problems every day. That's what I do. I love it, but it's a certain kind of problem and a certain thing that I'm good at, and that I have a good orientation for. So I think a big part of the discovery process is just seeing a lot of things, learning about them, trying it out to the extent that you can, and then kind of figuring out what clicks for any particular individual.
Yeah, for sure. What was that moment when you thought like, oh, like maybe I can use like this problem solving in like a different way and like
Yeah.
turn to law?
So certainly for the law, that came pretty late, right? So I discovered econ, like I talked about in undergrad, ended up double majoring in economics and American studies because I just had a lot of interest in literature and history and whatnot. I got a job as an economic consultant. I mentioned earlier that was a lot of fun. Learned how to build big Excel models, which was really cool. I really liked that. I like logic. I like
Mhm.
analysis. Like that was fit within that very well. I also like looking at business problems and learning about different markets and products and things like that. And we do research and write reports about that in connection with this. So it was a really good job for me in terms of mixing kind of qualitative and quantitative sides of my brain, which I enjoyed. I did that for about 5 years. Kind of at the tail end of that, it was time to think about what should I do. And most people coming out of that type of job go and do an MBA. And I was about to go do that. I still didn't really have law school in mind or anything like that. But a friend of mine at the time who was at Berkeley Law, he suggested I really look into it. He thought, I think you'll really like it. You should learn more about it and consider that. And so I did do that. I did some research, and it did feel like maybe I would be good at this. Maybe this would be kind of fun and interesting. So I ended up deciding to apply to JD MBA programs. That's a 4-year program. Now some schools will do 3-year programs, but typically law school, as you might know, is 3 years. Business school is 2 years. When I was doing it, you could do a combined degree, JD MBA in 4. Now some places you can do it in 3 in an accelerated way. But anyway, 4-year program that I committed to. Ended up going to Berkeley, which was a ton of fun. Really, really enjoyed that. It is an interesting. After I worked, remember I worked for 5 years in professional
Mhm.
services, so going back to school was really a treat at that time,
Yeah.
to kind of just reset and do something that was entirely for myself. Right, when you're
Mhm.
working, working really is about, yes, developing yourself and all of that, but a lot of it really is about serving your team, and helping everyone, and people are relying on you, right? So you want to
Mhm.
do a good job, because if you mess this thing up, somebody else on your team is going to suffer for it. When you go to school, it's really just about you. It's
Yeah.
kind of a chance to be very selfish again. If you do great, that's fantastic. If you do lousy, that's not so good. But the only person that kind of suffers from that is yourself,
Mhm.
right? So it's a just what was a in some ways kind of a selfish but stress relieving, actually, time in my life, and so that was kind of fun. And then when I was in that program, I still wasn't absolutely sure I wanted to be a lawyer, to be honest. I did a lot of um, research, informational interviewing, and just thinking about what I might want to do. A lot of people coming out of programs like that, JD programs, will think about going into investment banking, doing management consulting, maybe just going into industry and trying to get a job, usually in finance, as you try to move up, but try to be an executive at a company, kind of junior training executive type of role. After researching all that, I actually discovered law firm was good for me. And a big part of what that was just a chance to keep learning. Like I realized that's something that I'm really passionate about, like always getting better at whatever it is that I'm doing, whether that be, I don't know, playing guitar or weightlifting or, the practice of law. I'm really motivated by that, like the chance to continue to grow, continue to get better. And in order to do that, what you have to have is a big variety of work, and work that's pretty complex, right? And can grow in complexity. And that was something that I definitely saw the opportunity for here at a law firm. And it wouldn't involve the type of travel that you have to do as a consultant, which I didn't want to do at that stage of my life. Though we work long hours, it's not like investment banking hours. I think
Mhm.
you may have seen articles recently about analysts actually working to death, like literally to death, which is just terrible. But anyway, that's kind of how I ended up here. And then in terms of the law, I'm sure we'll get to this, but there are many areas of law to practice. And I didn't know anything about what I do now, this sort of startup corporate practice of law. But it really suits me. I found it to be just a ton of fun, a good mix of all the things that I'm interested in doing. A substantive component, of course, learning the law, but it's talking to clients of from all different backgrounds, running different types of companies within our space. We're just doing technology, but different types of technology companies, from very small, brand new, 2 girls and a dog starting a new company, right? To lots and lots of venture-backed companies, and up to big public tech companies. So you have different kinds of clients, the companies are our clients, and then different kinds of people there that we speak with, and figuring out how to communicate with them, how to help them understand the issue that they're dealing with, help guide their decision. That's just been really a lot of fun for me, and really suits my interests and skills.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before landing on like this tech, law firm, corporate area, were you ever considering a different type of law?
Yeah, I did. So most people will go into law school thinking they want to litigate, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what you see on TV. But I also had, so I didn't explain this earlier, but my economic consulting job, our end work product was expert witness testimony on damages and economics issues. So for example, if Company A was going to sue Company B for patent infringement, right? That Company B went out there, built this product, they're infringing on my patent, I'm going to sue them. There's a course proving that all out, that that actually happened and whatnot. And then if you won the case, right, and proved that you, in fact, Company B infringed on my patent, how much should I get paid for that? Okay.
Mhm.
And basically you'd hired an expert to come figure that out. And that's what I did. I worked for a, company that did that. And so that's why we had to do a bunch of different kinds of analyses, right? In terms of looking at what sales would be, what a reasonable royalty would be, what the market was looking like at the time, et cetera, and do all those kind of calculations and then write a report about it. So that's how all this came about. And so our customers in that economic consulting role were litigators. Okay, so litigators hired us. They were doing the litigating, but they needed us to help with the damages analysis, and so that was the exposure I thought I got as well. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll do that. That seems kind of interesting. When I actually got to law school, I mean, I enjoyed reading cases and writing and whatnot, but as I learned more about what the day-to-day would be like as a litigator, it didn't sound that appealing to me, actually. Like particularly in the early years, it's a lot of, it's very focused on the research, writing, and it's a little bit more lonely. And then there's a little bit of an element of a lot of document review, fact finding, that remember for me, by the time I came out of all of these stages and graduated from my JD MBA program, I was 30 years old. So I didn't want to be in a position where I felt like, wow, I am in the absolute bottom of this totem pole and a peon, right? And I'm going to have to be that for many, many years before I kind of work my way up into something
Yeah,
that felt more exciting and more interesting. So that just became less appealing to me, and I wasn't sure really though. So what am I going to do? And I ended up doing an internship basically at a law firm, and where I did a bunch of different kinds of projects, some litigation projects, some intellectual property projects, whatever. And I got this venture financing deal. I got staffed on it, and it said, okay, here's what a term sheet looks like. Here's some draft documents. Can you draft the full documents to reflect what's in the term sheet? It's like, aha, this is a puzzle, right? I can do that. This is what I love to do. So I jumped right in there and tried to do that. And I was like, oh, I, of course, I didn't have any idea what I was doing, right? But I could see the glimmers of this could be fun.
hmm
And then that's where I started focusing on learning more about that type of practice, figuring out what the opportunities are. And through all of that, eventually ended up here at Fenwick.
That's really cool. And now, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so okay, my typical day has evolved a lot as I've gotten more senior at the firm, as you might imagine. So at the very beginning, somebody coming out of law school is just learning what a deal looks like, right? What is the transaction? Learning the vocabulary, learning all the pieces, how to move the process along. And as part of that, starting to build the blocks of the substantive law, right? And it's a lot of that learning, a lot of processing. Um, can be very fast paced. Hours can be long. They're not all the time, but that you got to be. You're learning that art of client service, right? Which is what we do here in private practice. If you don't know that term, so basically, I saw on the list of the lawyers that you've done these interviews with. Many of them are in-house at companies, right? They're
Mhm.
lawyers that work at companies, lawyers who work at law firms that people call up to do whatever it is that they might need, some legal work they need to do. We call this private practice. And so
Okay.
there's kind of this. Anyway, in private practice, super client service focused, right? It's very competitive. We're very expensive. And our clients deserve the best. So we are very, very focused on making sure we provide great advice, great problem solving, and an incredible client touch as part of all of that. So you're learning all of that as you're going up the ranks. When I made partner at the firm, what was that, 10 years ago, something like that at this point. My job started to evolve a little bit more, right? So more and more on the client service side, more relationship building, a part of business development in terms of getting new clients, getting more work from existing clients. As an associate in private practice, your job is just to do the work, right? Like do the work, do the best you can, make the client feel good while you're doing it, and just learn. That's what your job is, entirely focused on just like the practice of law. When you become a partner at a law firm, at least in the role that I do, you do all that, but now you're also managing people, managing the teams that are helping to do the work. You're doing some of that as a more senior associate, by the way, too. So you're kind of growing up through the system. You're learning. This is a layering on, not a like flip the switch. Okay, so you're layering on all this stuff. So a lot of the management of teams and whatnot, and then helping to manage the clients and helping to get new work into the firm, and then a whole administrative component of being a partner here, from doing performance reviews, right? Hiring, sending out bills. That's probably my least favorite thing to do as part of this job, right? I love practicing law, I love dealing with the clients. Sending and collecting bills is not that much fun, but it's part of life. Just like I'm sure you don't love doing laundry, but you just have to do it if you want to wear clothes. So
Yeah.
that's what you got to do. That's how I think about bills. Like it's like doing laundry. You got to do that. And then more recently, I became the co-lead of our startup and venture capital practice area here at the firm. And so I have some leadership responsibilities on that in terms of thinking about what's the strategic vision of our group? How do I help our partners be more successful, providing different kinds of resources, providing strategic alignment, helping with continuing education, helping with new tools, all of those things, taking a little bit more of a leadership role in hiring and staff management and whatnot. So there's a whole leadership component of what I do today as well.
Hmm. And you've mentioned some bits and pieces about like what you love and not like that
Yeah.
much about your job. What would you say are the most rewarding versus the most challenging parts of it?
Okay, good question. There are really a lot of things that I like. I really like when I come up with a clever solution for a client, like say something that they wanted to do, and it isn't maybe the typical way of approaching it or whatnot, but we come up with something that will work both within the law. You're obviously not breaking the law, but also will work within market practice. Everything we do isn't in isolation, right? You're doing it and it touches a bunch of people. Will it be acceptable to all the people that are involved in that transaction or that decision? And I really take a lot of pride in coming up with something that works for all the parties and everyone's happy that we got to a good solution. So I love and that happens quite frequently, which is one of the great things about this job. Another piece that I really like, and this isn't specific to the law, but is part of what I love about my role, is seeing the people that I work with, the more junior people I work with, just grow. I think about people when they first start and see how hard they're working and how deep they're thinking, and just the people who really blossom. It's such a pride and joy, really, right, of seeing folks really develop. Like when I got to be senior enough, for example, of seeing younger associates that I work with make partner, for example, it's just like such a great day that they really came into their own, and it's just awesome. But even smaller stages where it was like, yeah, I remember this guy or that gal like could not have done this 2 years ago, and now it's like totally managing this client, totally managing that transaction, coming up with great ideas. I love that. So that aspect of helping people grow and develop, we get to see a lot of it here because it's one of those systems where you're at classes, you're moving up, people are moving up all the time, so that's a ton of fun. And then I still learn a lot. Like I learn new pieces a lot, and I love that. Like back to, I said this earlier, one of the things that excites me, I'm just super into learning and improving, and there's constant opportunities to do that here, which I find really fun. So it's intellectually challenging and engaging. I remember, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 years out of my graduate program, talking to a couple of my MBA classmates, and they told me they were really bored. with the job that they ended up at. Not everyone, of course, but just a few people. And I was like, oh, really? That's sort of surprising. I am never bored. Like that is not a word that I would use to describe. Like sometimes it's very stressful. It's actually often very stressful. But it's challenging in that really exciting way. And I love that. So that's the good side. What is the kind of harder side? I hinted at that a little bit, the stress, right? It's a very high stress job. We perform at the top of the game, right? When you're at a firm like Fenwick, and our clients deserve the best, and to give them their best, I have to be at my best. And as you know, it's hard to be at your best all the time, right? So that can be challenging. You know, when most of the people who are successful at this, private practice, are people pleasers, right? Like we're good at client service because we like to do well by our clients.
Yeah.
And so and it happens to everyone, the clients are not happy about something or another. It's quite stressful, like dealing with that. I don't like it. I don't like disappointing people. It troubles me as a person, right? Like probably deeper than the average person. And that's what makes me good at the job, but it also causes a lot of personal stress. So managing that is a big piece of it. Long hours can be grueling, and that can be challenging. It's most professional jobs though have fairly long hours, but you know that's people have different tolerances for that, right? So that's a piece. Um, uh, and I think those are probably the things that people complain about. Maybe sometimes folks don't like you do have to run fast and keep up, right? And some people don't like that, but that sorts itself out pretty quickly. Like people who are successful here like that, right? It's sort of, I don't know, I don't know if you play some sports or whatever, but
Mhm.
I don't know if you what do you play?
I play tennis.
Okay, so you play tennis. So you play tennis. How do you get good at tennis? You play other people who are really good,
Mm,
right? And you keep practicing and you play people who are good. And that's what this is like, right? Like you want to be good, you play in the best highest level you can, and that drives you to be better. And this is great, but that's not for everybody. You probably run into people like, oh, that's too competitive, or that's too I love tennis, but I would rather play more leisurely, right? And
mm,
then that sorts into a different way. So there's just an aspect of that in deciding to pursue a private practice and this kind of path.
yeah, for sure. And speaking more generally about law, how would you say law varies between its different fields? So, for example, like how is it different being like on the corporate side versus being like a litigation lawyer?
Yeah, so I've never been a litigator, so I
Mm,
don't know exactly, but uh, you know, the tasks are different, the end results are different, the kinds of clients are different. Even within litigation, there are many different kinds of litigation, right? You can do patent litigation, you could
mm,
do criminal law, you could do uh, uh, you know, even real estate litigation, whatever. There are all of these different kinds of things. So uh, a that one, I don't know that I can speak that intelligently about all the other different fields. I think one thing really to keep in mind is you have to find something you really like to do, or you can't do it. You can't run this hard and um, be that intense and engaged about it if you don't like it, right? Like if you hated tennis, you're just not going to go out there and practice all the time, right? So you got to find the thing that you like to do and want to do. So I don't know if you, for example, uh, uh, don't really care much about real estate, you probably shouldn't become a real estate
yeah,
lawyer, right? Like
yeah,
I think that's even if you're a really good litigator, you might decide, okay, I'm a really good litigator, but I'm just not going to take real estate cases because if I have to read another thing or look at another parcel map, I'm going to throw up. Then don't do that, right? Like you got to find the place that is a good fit for the things you're interested in.
definitely. And what about the most common misconceptions you've seen about lawyers?
Oh, maybe. I think a lot of misconceptions about lawyers are they like to fight, right?
Mm,
Like they're out there and they like to fight and they like to argue. I actually find the most effective lawyers, at least in what I do, do very little fighting and arguing. Almost no fighting, first of all, but even very little arguing, and it's more listening, really. Like,
mm,
what is it that people want? Are there and being creative about solutions, like not everything, and in fact, most of the problems that I face are not zero sum. It's not like it's you or me or that's it. We may be able to find a way that where we both agree. Not all the time, but a lot of times that's the case. And so the only way to find those solutions is to listen, right? Really understand what everyone's goal is, and then try to be creative in addressing that. So I think that that idea that you just want to argue all the time is actually quite a misnomer, at least in what I do. I think the most effective lawyers really try to figure out what's a solution that allows everyone to win a little bit and still accomplishes what we want to do.
hmm for sure. And maybe you don't have like personal experience to this one, but in your kind of opinion, what do you think, or how do you think high schoolers can get to know these different fields of law? And after they kind of know it, how do you think they can choose what they want to do for themselves?
Yeah, I think doing things like what you're doing now, right? Just talking to people. Uh, a, a, don't underestimate like the power of your parents' network, right?
For
And
sure.
if you are interested in something and you know, or maybe you don't even know, but you can ask your parents, hey, I'm kind of interested in XYZ field, whatever it might be. Do you know anybody who does that or is close to that? And can we just talk? Can you introduce me and maybe we'll have a conversation? I bet 99% of the time somebody's going to say yes. They'd be happy to chat with you
Mhm.
about what they do, and you could learn more that way. So that's a really good one. School, of course, school resources probably can help you with that to some extent as well. I think a big thing is just being curious, right? Learning, talking to adults. I think maybe even sometimes like you think about outings you might have with family, friends, or whatever. Do the kids just run off and do the kid things separate from the adults, or do you go and you like sit at the adult table and kind of listen to what they're talking about? And hey, surprise, surprise, adults like to talk about their work a lot, and so you learn a little bit about what they're doing and ask some questions and get engaged. And I think that's a great way to learn more about that. The other thing I might suggest is don't beat yourself up. You don't have to decide when you're 16, 17-year-olds what you're
Definitely.
going to do for the rest of your life. Like you really don't have any idea most of the time. Some people know from the beginning, like they know from like I want to be X and I will make every decision towards that. But that's rare. Most people find a little bit more of a meandering path and fall into what they want to do and just make good choices along the way so that when you decide what you want to do, that door is open for you, right? It's very hard to like, I don't know, never take a biology class and then suddenly when you're 25 years old, decide I want to try to be a doctor now, right? Like, try to make choices that keep the doors open for you, but you don't have to decide 100% that I'm going this direction right away.
Yeah. And sort of building off on that, do you have any final advice that you would give to high schoolers, whether they're interested in pursuing a career in law or they don't really know if law is for them? Any advice for anyone who's trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just be curious about the world around you, right? Learn and be engaged. I think so much of what's really easy to do is be real passive. Like just
Mhm.
kind of let the world wash over you. Just I don't know, spend too much time on social media, watching TV, whatever it might be, and not actually engage. And I think that simple example of, yeah, you could kind of, you're having a dinner party, you can go off in your room and just look at your phone, or you can go and talk to people and like learn what you can from them, right? And so I think that's the biggest piece of advice. Just don't kick yourself, don't kill yourself about like 24/7, I gotta be that way. But don't let great opportunities pass you by to just learn and then follow up and show interest in what you're doing. If you show interest in people, they will show interest in you. I think
Mhm.
that that's the big piece of it. And so, go do that. Go just engage in the world.